Welcome in to Moving the Chains. I'm Kevin Thomas alongside Jerel Hendricks. Got a great interview today for our ring season recap series. A very special guest, the head coach of the 2022 3A state champion Beaufort Eagles, Bryce Lybrand. Coach, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing well. Appreciate your time. We really do. If this is you guys first time tuning in, check us out. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all at Movin Chains. Our brand new website, movinchains.com. movinchains.com, and then our podcast on Apple, Google, Spotify, and more. This was Coach Lybrand's fourth season as the head coach of the Eagles. They went 13-1 on their way to the state title. Coach, for folks who didn't get to see you guys play this year, what would you say really were your styles kind of on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball?
I'd say it depended on what point in the season you saw us, because we were about three different offenses this year. We kind of start. We want to be a spread team. It's kind of what we've always done here. Probably a lot like what you see in college football with, like what Auburn used to do around with Gus Malzahn, and Clemson does some of it with the H-back and stuff. So we kind of like being that. But we kind of, as the year went on, we kind of morphed into a two-back offense in the playoffs, and obviously that's kind of what we rode in the playoffs. But defensively, we kind of base out of a 4-2-5, but pretty even going between an odd front and an even front. So I think that's probably what we do best as a coaching staff, is kind of figure out what our kids do really well, and then kind of morph what we need to do as a coaching staff to what suits our kids. And it may take us a few weeks to figure that out, but we've done a good job of it here, over the last 4 years of figuring out what our kids do well, and then kind of putting them in a situation where they can be successful.
Obviously, winning the state championship, you guys got it done, all three phases. You guys scored 34 on offense and held opposing offenses to 15 points a game on defense. Outside of Casey and Colton, I know most people listening to this know those guys, but who led you guys on this state title run?
Man, there's a ton. This is a group of 22 seniors, so I can't name them all, or we'll be here all day, but there's a lot of them. Hart Cushman played both ways for us. Hart was a guy who was a 3-year starter for us. Aaron Lamb was on the offensive line, did a really great job for us. Zach Talbert was a guy. Carter Bowersox was a guy. We just kind of had, McLeod Rochelle has been big for us at times. So we just had a good group of kids overall, that kind of grew into this great team, and we had the Knight twins that were guys that didn't start for us until this year, and then were great players for us. So I think that's the cool thing as a head coach, is just to be able to look at it and see kind of the progression that you see from kind of them being babies as freshmen to them as seniors being guys that really contribute. And sometimes you get guys that you weren't expecting to be contributors, and by the time they're a senior, you're like, dang, these kids are pretty good. So there's a lot of them. There were that senior group was really, really good. They were great leaders, and so I think that's probably why we were able to get done what we were able to get done.
We talk about Casey Fields, one of you guys, star players. Didn't really start at the running back spot early in the year. When you made that change, you guys kind of really took off, it seemed like. What promoted you or kind of prompted you to move him into that spot there?
Yeah, it's funny. Everybody gives you credit for that, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just stupid because we didn't have him before. We were sometimes as coaches, we overthink things, right? And so, the thought process was we can get more athletes on the field, more of our best athletes on the field if Casey's at wide receiver, and now, we can kind of stretch the field more and do some more things, and you kind of overthink it sometimes. And we just, early on, we just didn't have any pop in our offense. We were, it was, you get 2 or 3 here, you get 3 or 4 there, but if you get a negative play, the drive's over. And, we had to figure out a way to, get some big playability. And so we put him in late in the Goose Creek game, and he just was really, really good. And and I will say we tried him last year at some running back one of the games. I think it was James Island. It just wasn't working that night, so that's probably why we got away from it a little bit. But late in that Goose Creek game, he just looked really good. He looked really comfortable making cuts. I thought his vision was really good, and we went into the coaches meeting on Sunday and said he's a running back now. That's there, and we didn't look back from there. And he just every week it was just he goes out. He had 70 yards rushing against Goose Creek, and I don't know, like the fourth quarter. And then he goes out the next week. He rushes for 160 against May River, who's a really well-coached football team. He goes out the next week and rushes for 340. He goes out the next week, he rushes for 270. And it was just like we're looking around like, what in the world? And it was kind of one of those things where we had to sit him down and say, hey, like, you need to understand that this is not normal. You're going to have a game where you don't have 200 yards rushing. Now, it didn't happen much, but it was a little bit of a thing we were worried about as a coaching staff, just because you worry if maybe, you have that game where he's, at 120, which is a good game, and he's upset, but he never was. He just kind of took it in stride. So, but man, when we put him in at running back, we started hitting big plays. Other things started coming open for us, and it really kind of transformed us as an offense.
So, Coach, you lose that opening game to a tough Fort Dorchester team, and you win the rest of them. You guys scheduled really tough, your non-region play. Kind of speak about those tough matchups, losing that first game in those tough opponents. Like you mentioned, Goose Creek, that was the dogfight there. How did that help you guys once you got into region play and obviously into the playoffs?
Yeah, we believe in being aggressive in scheduling now. We want to play really good teams, and that's that probably comes from Coach Dula. That's the way he did it when we played at Greenwood. We'd always, I think the last 2 years I was at Greenwood, our out of conference was always Emerald and Abbeville because they were close to us. And I mean, y'all know Abbeville, those guys, they beat the brakes off of us my senior year. Holy smokes. But we always played those two, and then we'd play Dorman, Spartanburg, Burns, and Aiken, who was really good then. So we always saw really great teams. And just as a player, I just remembered kind of the comfort I had going into region play, because I was like, we ain't gonna see anybody better than what we've already seen. And so that's really what we try to do here scheduling wise. So we try to go out and find as many good teams as we can to play. Last year played 2 6A schools out of Georgia, played the 4A state champion out of Georgia. We went 3-0 against those teams. So we want to see really good teams. I want to see really good players. We try to schedule where we can hopefully see some things that we're going to see later in the year. We put Cane Bay on the schedule. One of the reasons we put them on the schedule was because, for a long time, Hanna was kind of doing some of that option stuff. So, it kind of gives you a prep week before you get into that. So you can kind of go back to it and say, hey, this is what we did against them. So we try to be smart in scheduling, but yeah, I like being able to stand in front of a team and say, hey, this team ain't better than what you've played. And hey, this quarterback or this running back or this wide receiver or whoever it may be isn't as good as what you've played already, and being able to know that I'm telling them the truth when they say that. So, we're always going to try to schedule tough and have it where we, are ready for the playoffs. I mean, I don't know. That's what we're all trying to do, right? We're all trying to win in the playoffs. Some of these guys drive me nuts. They schedule all these, cupcake teams because they want their record to be good. I don't really care about that. I'd much rather win in the playoffs because that's what matters. So, we think it's been good for us, so we'll continue to do that. And, we think it's an important part of our program.
Coach, obviously it certainly helped out because you guys had a heck of a tough playoff run. Crestwood, Gilbert both had, chances late against you guys. I think Gilbert had a lead late. Then you go on the road to Dillon between the White Walls, one of those places in the state to play, a tie game there in the fourth. You win that ball game. How did kind of those earlier matchups where you had some adversity kind of help you guys out in that playoff run, and also in the state title game where you went down, early as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it just – and that's what I told him. I actually told him after the Fort Dorchester game, I said, was trying to figure out what you guys were. But I knew after that game we could play for a state championship because they played so hard in that game. And honestly, matchup wise, I mean, we probably didn't have any business being on the field with Fort Dorchester, just to be completely honest. I mean, some of the guys they got on that team, but man, they played so hard. It was 14-6, I think, going into the fourth quarter. So we're right there. But they just kept fighting. And I said, we can win a state championship with this group now. If they're going to play that hard, we'll have a chance. So, you just keep playing, you keep putting yourself in situations. And I mean, part of it's just learning how to win, right? And that's, I think, one of the big things that's different in this program is, whether we're down or whether we're in a tough situation, like our kids expect to win football games. And we don't always do that. But, when we get in a tough spot, I think they're able to kind of take comfort in the fact that they've been there and they just trust their training. And, I think our coaches have been there and we don't panic. And so just kind of across the board, I think it's kind of led us to a place where we feel comfortable in big moments, in big games and great atmospheres, and everybody talked about Dillon, this year, and that was an unbelievable atmosphere, really tough place to play. But, people don't realize we went and beat Myrtle Beach last year at Myrtle Beach. Mm-hmm. And, Myrtle Beach was #1 team in the state going into the playoffs. I think they had only lost 4 games at home in the past 4 years or something like that. So, I don't know. We're just dumb enough to believe that we can win anywhere that we play. So let's just go see what happens. But yeah, I think it helps and it gets you ready for those big moments when you're playing in big games. And honestly, I don't know. As a coach, I get bored. I don't want to go play a bunch of terrible teams like that. It's not fun coaching. It's really not. When we can just call whatever we want to call and we can score, that's not fun. A game like Dillon, a game like Gilbert, where you're having to coach your tail off because they're coaching their tail off, that's fun. It's hectic in the moment, but man, it's a fun thing. It's kind of what you get into coaching for. So, I just think across the board, it's a good thing for us.
Well, you guys certainly coached and played your tails off in the big one down in Columbia. The state championship game resulted in a 41-31 victory over a white-hot Powersville team from the upper state. What allowed you to be successful in that game?
Yeah, they were really, really good, and 21 for them is about as good as I've seen on a high school football field. He is a really, really good player. I just think that I think part of it for us is just being in those big moments. And I think sometimes people don't understand, state championship games, those really, really big games. There's so much emotion in the game. And so you kind of have to ride that wave and then it settles and you have to be able to settle into whatever you're doing. And so we, obviously I don't want to spot somebody 14 points, but we kind of felt like if we can just kind of get out of this little rut that we're in to start with, where it's all the emotion of the game and just kind of settle into play in the game, I thought we'd be fine. And then you just got to lean on what brought you there. Right. And be good at what you do. And, we ran, power lead probably 80% of the time in that game. Sure. And that was a play that we put in that week. That wasn't in. It was just something that we kind of looked at how they played Clinton, who was obviously an unbelievable football team and was really good at running the football, and they kind of bottled Clinton up. And so we kind of felt like we were going to have to run it inside some. And so we said, well, we need to get another hat in the box. How can we do that? Well, if we lead them, and so that's what we started doing. And, we're very fortunate because Casey and Colton, they like blocking. Those guys came over to the sidelines more and went, hey, did you see that block, more than they did hey, did you see that run? So they took pride in it. So, kind of threw them something that they hadn't seen. Not that it's, some kind of crazy thing that we did, but, something to adjust to. And then, just kind of leaned on the offensive line to kind of wear them down. And, it's hard to tackle Casey and Colton for 4 quarters. They're such big physical kids that, at some point, everybody kind of wore down on it. And that's kind of what happened. And, defensively, that's a tough task to ask to stop that team. And, that back is so good that, we're just trying to find a way to slow them down some and make a play here or there. And obviously we get the one stop and then kind of the crazy interception fumble deal. But you're just trying to make one stop. And so the defense gets a stop when we need it and you're able to win. And that's kind of how the game works. And, we felt like, special teams is always something we're really going to focus on here. And, that may be the difference in the game in the state championship. You get a fake punt that extends a drive when you're down 14 and then, return a kick for a touchdown. And so, it felt like in all three phases of the game, we did a really good job of just trying to kind of do what we do best and give us the best chance we could to win the game.
I do want to ask you that fake punt, Coach. I think you guys were down 14-0 at the time there. We're kind of driving around midfield. Was that something that you had in all year, or did you see something on film that week said, hey, if we attack right here, get the right situation, we'll kind of go with it?
No, we had it in for most of the year. We've had it in a lot. We do, to be honest with you, a lot of stuff with our punt team. And it's been really good to us. And so, we felt like going into that game, though, that, the way Powdersville kind of lined up, they kind of left the middle open. And they stood everybody up on the line. And so nobody was kind of in a stance. And so we just felt like, if we just kind of get everybody hip to hip and just push, you get Colton in there that we can probably go get 5 or 6 if we need it. And he was able to go do that. But it was just kind of one of those things that we have a lot of fakes and tricks and stuff in just in case we need it. We believe in kind of making everybody prepare as much as they can. So we like to show that stuff some and just so they have to prep for it, spend extra time on it. But it was kind of one of those things going into the game that I felt pretty confident that we'd probably fake one at some point if we were in that 3 to 5 yard range that I felt comfortable in and the moment was right that we would do it. And honestly, in that moment, we needed to keep that drive going. We needed to score. It didn't need to go to 21 because at 21 it could be a very different story. So you're just trying to kind of steal some momentum back, and obviously we were able to do that.
One of the things I love about football, but specifically high school football, you mentioned in this interview, you change your offense about 3 times throughout the season. You talk about the play you run 80% of the time you implement during game prep for the state championship. Right. You guys threw 0 passes in this game, taking it old school. As an offensive guy, how tempted were you to throw the ball, at some point, and how tough was that to stay disciplined and keep pounding the football?
In that game, it was not hard. Really and honestly, guys, that was not something that we set out to do. I've never done that in my career. I haven't. It's the first time it's ever happened. It's probably the first time it's even close to happening. But it just that's the way the game was going. And so, we were kind of in that mode of like, what's the reason? Like that's kind of always what I'm thinking of when I'm play calling. Like, what is the reason that you're calling this play? And if I'm calling a pass just because I know I hadn't thrown a pass yet, well, that's dumb. Like, we were averaging, 7 yards a rush, something like that. So there wasn't really any reason to do it. And like I said before, like we've always been a spread team, and our quarterback last year threw for 2,700 yards or something like that. So we're just, people drive me crazy talking about their philosophy. Well, we're this, like, well, that's dumb because you're in high school and you don't know what you're going to be like. And if you're so married to a system that you can't adapt to what is best for the players that you have, then you're just not a very good football coach. And that's just what it is. So we've never been married to a system. We're just kind of married to being really good. That's what I want to be married to. So whatever gives us the best chance to score and best chance to win is what we're going to do. But that night we didn't think about throwing it. I mean, really and honestly, I asked our offensive coordinator after the game, I said, he's our offensive line coach. He's phenomenal. His name's Logan Powell. And he said, I said, hey, did you think about suggesting a pass play at any point? And he said, nope. Did you think about calling one? I said, nope. So we were on the same page, and it really kind of started early in that game. I think the third drive we started seeing some of the physicality kind of take a toll a little bit. And so at that point we kind of knew, like, okay, we need to go hammer on it right here. And so, that's what we did. And obviously it was successful for us. So, when you're in the state championship game, the only thing you're trying to do is win. I'm not worried about style points. So, I'll let somebody else throw it around all the time, if that's what their team does best.
Beaufort, when you were an assistant, even before that, they hadn't had, I would say, this level of success. I think for last state title was like 1945 or something like that. What's it been like kind of changing the culture down there? And, you guys have now been the state title game back-to-back years, winning this year. What's that kind of process been to get into these higher expectation levels for the Eagles?
Yeah, it's different. I think when we took over the first year, it was just all about discipline. It was just about, hey, this is the way you do things. Okay, let's get back to basics of, like, this is how you practice. This is what an off-season workout program looks like. This is what, and so you kind of build it from a really kind of elementary level of like, these are the things you have to do to be really good. And then you have the COVID year, and there is no playbook for that. I don't know. I don't know if we did a good job during that. I don't know if we did a bad job during that, because there is no measuring stick, right? So, we just kind of navigated that as best we could. We got beat by Myrtle Beach in the quarterfinals that year. But we punched with them. And so at that point we kind of went like, hey, we can play with people. Like, those are as good. That they had JJ Jones and Adam Randall and Berger and Doty's little brothers there. And so, like, they had a bunch of dudes, and we were right there in that game. And so, I think that kind of gave us the confidence that we can play with the best. And so, and then we weren't shy about it last year. We told everybody, the goal is the state championship, and we got there and didn't get it done. And so now the goal was to win it. And so I think you've got to have realistic expectations. I didn't come in the first year, start talking about state championships. We had to figure other things out. We had to learn how to work. Whereas now we've kind of learned what the standard is for our kids and for our program. And, I think that's kind of how you have to build it. But, when you get to the point where you feel like you're good enough, I think you need to put those expectations out there and let them know that, hey, this is what the goal is. And that's, when we beat Dillon, our kids were super excited, but every one of those kids wanted to win the game. It wasn't like nobody went into the state championship going, man, how cool is this that we're here again? Everybody just wanted to win. And so, probably a lot of lessons learned last year from a coaching standpoint, just getting everything ready for the week and how we were going to approach it, and for the kids too. So, it's been a long road, and people don't realize, like, my first 5 games as a head coach, we lost. We were 0-5. We were not great. We win the next 4. And then I think since then we're 34-7 since then, something like that. So, it's been really good, but it didn't start really good. There were probably a lot of people ready to run me out of here before the season was over. But we believed in what the plan was, and obviously it's kind of paid off for us.
You mentioned that experience last year, playing in the state championship game, and how it helped you as a coach and your staff, and obviously the players going into it. We noticed it too on the sidelines. We could tell you guys were really calm and focused before the game, as opposed to Powdersville. They were pretty emotional and jacked up. And so we were very shocked that you guys went down 14. You think even going down 14 and that experience, in that game last year really was, the determining factor in helping you guys win, and just realizing, like, hey, we spotted them 14. We've been here before. We know we can win this football game.
Yeah, man, we didn't have any problem playing from behind, man. That was the whole playoffs for us. I'm like, we were down 18 against Crestwood, and I was like, holy smokes, this is bad. Now, and they did a great job against us. that was kind of when the two-back thing happened. We had been working that for, I don't know, like 6 weeks or something. We just told our kids we weren't using it until we had to. And they forced our hand and we had to. We were able to go, score a bunch of points. But, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things like we talked about earlier, like the crescendo of a state championship, like the emotion of it, if you don't watch, it can take all the energy out of you.
Sure.
And, pre-game's different and, and I get it. People want to holler around and yell and jump. And if that's who your team is, that's what that's what they should do. That's not what our team is. Our team is very blue collar, workman-like. Let's go out and handle business. That's just the way we do things. So every team's different. So whatever, you were talking about Powdersville being like really animated in pregame. Well, if that's who they were all year, then that's who they needed to be in that game. That's just we have kind of a different approach. And so I don't know that one's better than the other. It's just who we are. But yeah, I mean, we had been down so much. And I mean, you're down 18 against Crestwood and, they've got probably the best returning quarterback in the state of South Carolina next year. That kid's phenomenal. And had a bunch of weapons and they were scoring and, and so we were in tough spots all year. So to get down 14 early, it kind of is what it is. You kind of just go, okay, well, we got to settle in here. But once we got it to 14-7, I knew we were going to be okay. Like, they had kind of thrown the big haymakers and we were still standing. And at that point, it was about kind of settling into our game. So, you go in at halftime and kind of make adjustments, and then you come out and score, and now you're in the driver's seat. Now you're in the lead, and that kind of changes things. So, just kind of how the game goes. But yeah, our kids don't panic. They've been in that situation several times this year, and so they were confident that we were going to come out and do what we were supposed to do and win a game.
Got a couple easier ones for you here, Coach. Maybe it's on the bus ride of the game, or maybe it's your office, something like that. What's on your pregame playlist?
Oh man, it really kind of depends. Like there's never anything like real hype up music. I need to like calm down before games. So it could be anything from like Tom Petty to newer country stuff to Bruce Springsteen to who knows. So it could be really anything. I could be listening to a true crime podcast. It depends on what's kind of on rotation at the time. So just anything that kind of gets me away a little bit.
We haven't been able to make the trek down from the upstate, but what's it like down there on Friday nights? It's called the Eagle's Nest, right?
Yeah, man. Let me tell y'all are missing the one of the more raucous atmospheres in South Carolina. We got 3 guys that volunteer, local dudes that work the PA and the DJ booth, and it's a party here. It's loud. It's kind of like it's like Spinal Tap, right? Like just turn it up to 11. That's what they do. They play music the whole game. People hate it. Like when they come play here, they can't stand it. But it's a different kind of atmosphere. It's loud. It's fun. Everybody's having a good time. So, part of the reason we've been so successful here, we lost 1 home game in the last 2 years. So, we've been really good, but it's a really cool, fun atmosphere. There's Spanish moss everywhere. And, I think it's one of the really neat places in South Carolina to see a football game.
So, Coach, other than Beaufort, so obviously, you grew up in Greenwood. I've been coached around the state. Mm-hmm. What is maybe another cool atmosphere that you've been able to play in or coach in your time here in the state? Yeah,
I mean, when I was playing, Burns was always a cool place to go play because that was kind of in their heyday. So, they had the Nixon Nuts and the band was huge. And, it was always a big game when Greenwood and Burns played. So that was always kind of a cool place to go play. Coaching wise, going and coaching at like Somerville, I always thought was just a really neat place to just old school. If you're on the visitor side, like the fans are like on top of you because they got that little short wall and everybody's just there. I think that's kind of a neat place. And so I think that's it's neat to go to old school kind of relics, right? And play in some of those places. Like Dylan, I'd never been there before, but that's a cool atmosphere. It's just different. Like you don't see a place like that ever. And so those kind of places are just really fun. So anytime you don't have a track around the field, I think it's kind of a cool atmosphere because everything's so close to you. So those are probably places that kind of stick out in my mind.
All right, I got to ask you a typical Moving the Chains question about food. We're foodies here. We need a couple spots to hit up in Beaufort when we come down to the Eagles Nest.
Okay. Well, there's our coaching staff kind of is sponsored by this place called Hearth. It's a pizza joint downtown. Got great Italian food, so we're kind of in there a lot. If you want a sports bar, there's a place called Brody's down the road that's pretty good. And so, man, there's some good places here, but
no seafood. Come on, you gotta give
and that's the thing. It kind of depends. Like if you're a fried seafood guy, you go to Dockside. If you're like a more of a higher end seafood, there's a place called Fish Camp on 11th that's good. So, you got to understand, like when you live here, like you can't get in those places. Like they're like all the tourists and grab. So like, I would love to go to Dockside and get like fried shrimp or something, but the place is packed. I'm not like, you just can't find it. So we try to go elsewhere, but if you're in downtown Beaufort, on a weekend, there's a decent enough chance you're going to run into a coach from Beaufort at Hearth.
Well, this has been great, Coach. Definitely all of our listeners and viewers go check you out on Twitter, Facebook. Coach Lybrand and the Eagles program do a great job of posting stuff on their athletes and keeping updates, things like that. And like I said earlier, follow us, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, etc., movingchains.com, all those places. Jerel, anything else for Coach? We'll let him go today.
No, just congratulations on a magical season. Well-deserved, especially, coming back from last year. I know that's, to get to the top and almost get there, but then, reaching that mountaintop the next year was really special. Really happy for your community in the lower state football, getting some respect that they deserve. And just really excited to see what you guys do next year.
No, I appreciate that. Thanks, guys. I appreciate everything y'all do.
Thanks for your time, Coach. Really appreciate you.
All right. Thanks.